Jason, I want to thank you to give me the opportunity to be here and interview you.
You're welcome.
And please tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born, and if your childhood had impacted your career?
Fantastic. Yeah. Hi, my name is JasonLanier. Yeah, I don't need to say that. I was born in Hollywood, California, city of the stars. My mom decided to have me there for some crazy reason. No, I grew up in Southern California. I lived my whole life there. Outside, I lived in Korea for a couple years. I started loving photography ever since I was a kid. I went to the Carlsbad Caverns with my dad, and that's down in New Mexico. And these, huge caves.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow.
And I remember my dad had this old Nikon, like the really old ones, because this is when I was forever ago, right? This is a long time ago. Probably when I was 8 and or even earlier. And I remember going into the caves and watching my dad put this camera on a tripod. And I thought, I just asked him, Dad, how in the world are you going to get any pictures? He said, don't worry, son, I will. And so, I went and, back in those days, you had to, do the film yourself. So
mm-hmm.
he got the film, and I looked at the pictures and I was amazed. And that's really what sparked photography for me. Mm-hmm. I had a paper route, and the first thing when I was 15 years old, I went and bought my first Nikon. And then it was a great excuse to shoot pictures of girls in high school. So photography definitely started for me when I was a kid.
Okay, you almost answered the part of my second question, which I was going to ask you, what did inspire you to start a photography career? And how did you educate yourself to become an award-winning photographer?
Those are great questions. I loved photography from the time I was a kid, but that's not what inspired me to become a photographer. Mm-hmm. I've only been a professional photographer for 7 years.
Oh, interesting.
I was a hotel executive, and I worked for Starwood Hotels, for Marriott Hotels, for all those guys. Mm-hmm. And what happened is, as is the case with a lot of people, there's a lot of great people in hotels, but hotel people, when they're done with their meetings, they go out and get drunk. Mm-hmm. And I remember very vividly, I was in Florence, Italy. We were there on a business trip, and they would get hammered. And I don't drink. So at the time, I had a Fuji S3 Pro, mm-hmm. right? And that was my first digital DSLR. Mm-hmm. And I had a Fuji S3 Pro. And I went, and every night when they would go get drunk, I went to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Mm-hmm. And I went down into the Domos. And I would shoot these just amazing things. And it was funny, I'd get back the next day, and they would kind of be hungover. And I'm not joking, they really were hungover. And their heads were hurting. And I'm sitting there on my laptop looking at my pictures. And my pictures weren't that good at that time. Okay, it's not like they were award-winning photography, it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But they were they were okay. And I knew enough about a camera at that point. And they were amazed at what I was doing, and they even asked for my pictures. And even at the time I said, no, if you want the pictures, you got to get out and get them yourself. But so I was sitting down for Christmas dinner with my wife and her family. And my wife's sister, Carly, says to me, hey Jason, thanks so much for shooting Brittany's wedding. I said, Brittany? Who's Brittany? And she said, well, your wife volunteered you to shoot a wedding. I said, a wedding? I'm not going to do a wedding. I mean, a wedding is for crappy photographers, right? And I wasn't even a photographer. I was just a hobbyist. Mm-hmm. And so... It
was how many years ago?
7. This was 7 years ago. Okay. I shot my first wedding March of 2007. Mm-hmm. 2007. So this was at Christmas in 2006. And so fast forward, they said, please just go meet with her. And I said, oh my gosh. I mean, I felt really stupid, right? I don't want to go to pretend to be something. And I wasn't going to pretend to be something. So you'll get a kick out of this. So they invite me over, and I'm thinking, this place, if they want me to shoot the wedding, I'm a nobody, right? So if they want me to shoot the wedding, they must be broke, right? Or live in like a really crappy house. I can't make this story up. I have the evidence to prove it. We go there. It's this 8,000 square foot mansion.
Wow.
In the hills. And we're walking down this long driveway to the house, and my wife, I told her, you're coming with me because you got me into this. And I was just dumbfounded that they even wanted me to show up. So I come, and you'll get, and so I get, you know, I was a corporate guy at the time, so I did a PowerPoint presentation with pictures of my kids and a few landscape shots, right? And I go into the house, and we go, and we get in there, and the dad is this high rich lawyer, right? So we get in there, and the dad's like, well, you know, Jason, I like your pictures, but I mean, do you even shoot people? Because again, most of my pictures were landscapes. And I just said to him, I said, look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I didn't even ask to be here, to be honest with you. So if you don't want me to shoot it, it's not a big deal. And so Brittany and Greg was her fiance. Greg says, well, you know, Jason, we like you. And I said, well, I like you guys too, but it's your wedding. I mean, you don't want to screw around with your wedding. And they said, well, how much would you charge? I had no idea, right? I had no idea what to say. And so I thought, well, what would this adventure, what would this risk be worth it to me? So I just threw it out there. I don't know, I'll charge you $2,500. So they said, okay, we'll think about it. And I was totally okay with that, right? I mean, seriously.
Sure.
So I leave the house, and I'm walking out, and no joke, about 10 seconds after we walk out the front door, walking down the long driveway back, Brittany comes running out, Jason, 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 we want you to shoot the wedding. And I turned around, and you know what I said? Really? Why? Why do you want me to shoot your wedding? She said, I just have a really good feeling about you, and I think it'll be great. So at that point, I was nervous. I said yes, and I took the money. But I decided I was going to just get some shoots ahead of time. So I went and I did bridal shoots, engagement shoots. I did every possible shoot that I could so I could get some experience. And then we went and shot the wedding. And for back then, it turned out really well. The shots, I had a good idea of composition, and I was shooting in manual, at least at that point in my, you know, well, that was the beginning of my career. But in my life, I had progressed to the point that I was shooting in manual. So it turned out well. I mean, nothing compared to what I'm able to do now. But that was a fun adventure.
Interesting. Okay. What were the biggest personal or professional challenges throughout your career path?
Well, that's a great question. Personally, being a photographer is hard because it's feast or famine. You know, if you're a wedding photographer, which, you know, I tell all my workshop students, if you're going to make money at photography, you probably better do at least some weddings, at least to start. And then as it goes into, you know, do weddings or whatever else. So because most of us are wedding photographers, and there's a million of us, right?
True.
There's a million. And I contribute to the problem because I teach photographers, right? But I feel that talent rises to the top, so I'm not. There's some photographers who really worry about other photographers. I don't. I think if you're good at what you do, you don't worry about what other people do. That's just my thing. But so we had, I guess personally, as a photographer, it's hard because I went from a job where I was making very comfortable six-figure income, bonuses, my own, you know, I had stock options, I had a great health plan I wasn't paying for, all that stuff. So to go to your wife and say, I want to do this, it's pretty crazy, because what I ended up doing is after I shot that wedding, I went and started booking weddings that year. I had no weddings, and I started booking tons of weddings. And so I went, and 6 months later after I shot that first wedding, I quit hotels. And so what I ended up doing was going there and then So I think personally, the hardest thing is money.
Yes, that's
because and it's self-discipline. You have to really be disciplined enough to where you are able to be a photographer and have that structure to where you can work from your home and so on and so forth. So I think that personally, that's the hardest thing. Professionally, where do I start? I mean, so many challenges. I think a lot of photographers, and everything I'm sharing with you is something that happened to me. Well, I'll just talk about me. I think you sometimes can you do one of two things. You're either very hard on yourself to the point that you don't progress, or you think you're better than you are, right?
That's true.
I thought I was a lot better than I was. I really did. I remember the first year I went to WPPI, I'm walking around and I think I'm pretty hot stuff, right? I submit my stuff to the competition. I didn't win anything, didn't place, didn't anything. Then I'm looking at everyone else's pictures, and my first instinct was I thought, well, these judges are crazy. They just don't know what they're talking about, right? Stupid idiots. I'm an artist. They don't understand my vision, right? It's ridiculous. I started realizing that I just wasn't that good. I think professionally the hardest struggle was nobody wanted to help, and many photographers are struggling with teaching themselves. And I also believe that photographers lie on purpose. I've seen it happen. I went to a workshop where a photographer purposely gave bad photoshopping advice, and I can't share his name, but oh man, he's famous, and his pictures are immaculate. So when I started understanding about what you should do with Photoshop, I realized what he had told us was a complete lie.
Wow.
So,
what do you think of the photography industry at the moment, and where you see it in 5 years from now? What do you like or dislike about what is happening in photography today?
That's a really good question. Photography industry, I think there's a really big plus and minus as it relates to the industry today. Number one, we have more opportunities than we've ever had. So as a photographer, if you are an aspiring photographer, because of social media, because of the digital revolution of cameras, we've never had a better opportunity than we do now to be successful. But there's a flip side to that. Back to what I was talking about earlier, there's 1 million photographers. And it seems every day there's 500,000 more.
Wow.
And that's not an official stat. It's just a matter of it's crazy how many photographers are coming into the industry. We also have a lot of people who enter the industry who really aren't doing photography because they love it, but just because it's the only thing they can do, and or do it on a mediocre basis. So I think where we're at it as photographers, I love new photography coming in because I want the great talent that exists out there. I want it to rise to the top. Where do I think we are as an industry? That's a great question. I think we are right now on the cusp of having a huge divide between the elite photographers and everyone else. Because you have clients who are willing to pay elite photographers, but there are very few. There's not a lot of them out there, right? There are people, depending on the wedding, I'll get paid $7,000 to $12,000. So there's not a lot of people willing to pay that. Okay, so the vast majority of the market is in the $1,500 to the $2,500 range, and because of that, it doesn't leave a lot for other photographers. So where do I think we'll be in 5 years? I think that we are going to be even more saturated, and I also believe that the photographers who have made the effort to improve themselves will survive and thrive. Photographers who are all about marketing and don't have any substance are going to die.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. You talk about the industry. Here's another point about the industry. I told you it's a loaded question. Another point about the industry is we have a lot of photographers who don't know what they're doing. And they don't know what they're doing not because they're dumb. They don't know what they're doing because some of them are lazy. I always tell my clients, if you look at the vast majority of wedding photography out there, all the skies are blown out. Everything's blown out. And then they call it indie vintage. Well, guess what? That's going to go by the way of the dinosaurs. It's going to be trendy. The bottom line is you need to have a mastery of all levels of photography, and if you do, you're going to be incredibly successful.
Great answers. What kind of impression do you hope to leave upon others who see your pictures?
What kind of impression do I want to leave on others?
What makes you happy?
I want them to find joy in my images. I feel incredibly blessed that I get to do what I do. I seriously pinch myself. I can't believe I get to do it, right? I can't. I still can't believe I get to walk around and take pictures and I get paid. I mean, is there anything better than that, right?
I know, especially when you like it, you love it, you have the passion. That's amazing.
It is. Yeah. It is. And so for me, I think that what I want people to get out of my pictures are joy. I want to take people to places they've never gone. I want people to look at my images and it takes them to a different place.
Okay.
I want my images to change people's perception of what is beautiful. I mean, recently I went and shot inside the Six Flags Park in New Orleans, right? It's this horrible, beautifully horrible, abandoned, I have a video coming out, but this abandoned park. It's decay, it looks like a nuclear bomb went off on it, and people ask me all the time, why would you take a bride in there? And my question is, why not? Because everyone takes a bride and runs around a field. Who cares? It's boring. Don't be boring. Go out and do something dynamic and different. So, that would be my answer.
Okay. It's almost the last question. I know you also are an accomplished speaker and teacher to photography students. Please advise how someone can start a successful photography business. What is the role of education, experience, and talent in success?
Experience, education, and talent.
Because when students, I'm asking this question because as a student, when they graduate, I think it's like they cannot do anything as a professional photographer. They are not even close. So that's why.
They're not.
So
they're not.
That's an important part of. Actually, I want to know your idea.
The role of education, experience, and talent in photography. Number one. There's a lot of talented photographers who are lazy, so they're not going to be very successful. Then there's a lot of not so talented photographers who work very hard and they are successful. The best, of course, is when you get a hardworking, talented individual.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the honest truth. Education is important. It's critically important. But education has to be paired with real life experience. Okay. Nobody likes a book smart person who doesn't know anything about the streets. They don't.
Right.
Okay, when I was in hotels, and I worked for 10, 12 years in hotels, and then you have some guy graduate out of Cornell and comes, and he pretends he knows everything about hotels, and you laugh. Because you don't know anything. You just read it in a book. Okay, but his knowledge is still very vital. So I think for people who are trying to start a career, first thing is, this is the absolute most important thing you can do. Find a mentor. You have to find someone who will help you. You have to find someone who will give you real experience. Okay? If you don't, you're going to have a very hard time being successful. That's just the truth. So for you, find someone. You want to intern for me? Fine, I'll let you intern for me.
I would love to.
But and I mean that, you can. But I mean, I let people come to my stuff for free a lot of the times because I want to help people.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so what I'm trying to tell you is, first thing is you have to get experience. You asked an earlier question about being self-taught. I have done more free shoots than anyone I know. Now, not free like family and kids. That's a waste of time. That's the honest truth. I'm kind of a blunt guy. It's a waste of time. What you need to do is go onto a website like modelmayhem.com. You need to find some models. You need to go down to the Goodwill. You need to buy about 4 or 5 wedding dresses. You need to put them on those models. You need to go out and shoot and shoot and shoot. And you need to have somebody who's better than you take a look at your shots and tell you where you suck.
Oh.
And then you take your images and you work on it. That's how you're going to really be successful. You're not going to be successful just getting a degree, or you're not going to be successful just pretending that you're talented. You're not really talented unless people tell you you are.
Yes, that's right.
So the bottom line is, for those who are really looking to grow, get your butts out and work. There is nothing that will replace hard work. Nothing. And hard work will trump lazy talent. Just the absolute truth.
Great. All right, thank you so much. Any other thoughts you want to share?
How'd you hear about me?
I found you online, yes. The text about it was this one. JasonLanier is an award-winning world-traveling photographer. When I got this, then I continued with the other stuff.
Oh, very cool. What did you Google? Just Southern California photographers?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, first thing I'd like to tell you is I appreciate you cut me. I always love to help students or anybody. Second thing is don't give up. There will be a lot of people who tell you are not meant to be a photographer. This is the truth. And this message is for every aspiring photographer. There will be many people who tell you, there will be more people who tell you that you're not going to do it than people who tell you you will. There will be people who tell you it's a waste of time. When I quit hotels, you know what that jerk said to me? He said, well, you're going to be a photographer? I said, yeah. He says, okay, I'll hire you to shoot my kid's birthday party someday. You know what I said to him? You won't be able to afford me, you jerk.
That's a great answer.
And my point is...
Yeah. They don't take it seriously.
They don't take it seriously.
They don't.
Well, you know what? It's not a matter of picking up a camera and taking a picture. If you can do that, do what I do. Right? Do what I do.
Right.
That's what I always say. I have people come up to me at weddings, not as much anymore, but when I was newer, they would come up to me and say, oh, well, why don't you get a real job? And you know what my response always is? I make more than you. Don't let people push you around, because that's just adults bullying adults.
Yes.
And I don't put up for that crap. So don't give up on your dreams. I mean, seriously, don't let people manipulate you to where you give up on your dream. You know, I wish that I would have been steered in a direction of being artistic when I was younger. You know, my parents never pushed it down. They never told me I couldn't. But I wish that there would have been opportunities, and I wish I would have had a mentor when I was young, because I would have been doing this since I was 18.